Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our Vegan Spirituality online gathering. We're so excited this month. We have Jeffrey Cohan, who's joining us from Jewish Veg, and also my co-host, Judy Carmen. And I'm Lisa Levinson. I'm the director of the Sustainable Activism Campaign for In Defense of Animals. And actually, this whole project is part of our campaign to offer emotional and spiritual resources for animal activists and vegans. So it's a delight to be here. We're so happy to present this to you every month. And this online gathering was actually born of our in-person gatherings, which we have about 20 different gatherings across the country where people meet monthly to explore what does it mean to be vegan as a spiritual path. And each group will have different events. Sometimes they involve a vegan potluck, or they may involve a speaker or a presentation or an activity. Could be visiting a animal sanctuary or discussing an article that relates to veganism and spirituality. So there's lots of things going on. If you're really curious about an in-person event, please visit veganspirituality.com, and under the Groups tab, you can see all the locations where we have groups. And even if you'd like to start your own group in your area, please let us know. But this online gathering is a great opportunity for folks who aren't in one of those cities and still want to connect, and we can create this wonderful network of people across the country and across the world, actually, who feel that veganism and spirituality represents who they are. So thank you all so very much for joining us this evening. I'd like to hand it over to Judy to introduce herself and share a little bit more. Before I do, just one last thing. I'm the technical person on the call here, so I will be checking the chat box. If you're on the computer, you can type anything into the chat box and we'll respond to you. And the first part of the call is going to be in a listen-only mode, but then we'll open it up to questions so people can ask either via the phone or via the chat box. Ask questions of our guest. And if you have any concerns, such as you can't hear what's happening or something along those lines, just send it to us in the chat box and I'll see if I can troubleshoot it on this end. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thanks
Judy?
so much, everybody. This is Judy Carmen. I am helping Lisa do this vegan spirituality thing, which I think it's a wonderful way to reach out to everybody, especially, like Lisa was saying, the people that don't have a local group of their own, a local vegan spirituality group, which, as she said, you can go to that website and look and see. Maybe there is one near you. But tonight, we can all share in learning more about Jewish Veg. And we are so blessed to have Jeffrey Cohan with us. He is the executive director of Jewish Veg, and you can see the websites over there in the chat box. So you can go to those. It's either jewishveg.com or jewishveg.org. So either one of those will work. He is the author of The Beet Eating Hebe, a popular blog about the theology of veganism. He became a vegetarian in 2007 and a vegan in 2011 after studying what the Torah instructs us about our dietary choices. An experienced public speaker, he worked in print and broadcast journalism for 18 years before starting a second career in Jewish communal service. Jeffrey was the director of community relations for the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh from 2005 to 2012, and then took the helm of Jewish Veg, which is a nonprofit, and he has emerged as that group has emerged as the fastest growing vegan advocacy organization in the nation. He earned a BA from the University of California at Berkeley and a Master's of Public Management from Carnegie Mellon University. Lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with his wife, Catherine, daughter, Kylie, and cats, Nadia and Crosby. Did I say Naya's?
It's actually Nala, so all you Lion
Nala.
King fans
Okay.
will recognize that
All
name.
right. Well, Jeffrey, welcome and thank you for taking the time to join us and educate us. One thing I know everybody is wondering about is how did you accomplish the amazing growth of Jewish Veg? How did you do that?
Well, thank you, Judy, and thank you, Lisa, and thank you to everyone who's out there participating in this video conference. It's in answer to your question, Judy, yes, it's been an awful lot of hard work. That's the first thing. But there's a couple of other things that have been essential. The first is that we have put together a really amazing team. So it's not just me by any stretch. We have a really supportive, really smart board of directors. We have an amazing advisory council with some names on it you might recognize, like Alex Hershaft, a farm, Karen Ginsberg, and a great rabbinic council, too, of leading rabbis around the country from all the denominations of Judaism who not only have lent their names, their expertise, their prestige to our organization. So it's really been a team effort. And there's been one other really important piece, and those are our members. We use the term members and donors interchangeably. I know some of them are on the call tonight, and without their support, we couldn't do any of this. So it's really a combination of those things. But just to give people a sense of how we've grown, as recently as August of 2013, we had no money to do anything. We had no paid staff. Now we have a budget. You can look at on guides at RCR 990, well into six figures. We're about to go to 4.5 full-time employees, which so in a very short amount of time, yeah, we have grown really fast. Thank God.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So how did you actually do that growth besides all the support you have? Is it mainly because of getting all those wonderful advisors, or?
You know, a lot of it, the advisors have a lot to do with it, both in the expertise they have given us in how to grow an organization, but also the relationships, the networks, because really that's what it's all about. So that's really helped us expand the number of people involved and the number of people supporting the organization. And I should say, too, and that's true for In Defense of Animals and Vegan Spirituality Online, one thing we're all really blessed by is the timing is right for what we're doing. We're seeing incredible growth in the vegan movement in general. So Jewish Veg is just one beneficiary of that.
Oh, that is good news. That's good to hear. So, so what are some of the ways that you're engaging the Jewish community in conversations about this, and also, I assume, other denominations, other religions as well?
Yeah, one thing that makes our job a lot easier, it is challenging, but one thing we really have going for us is the religion itself. And specifically what I mean is that what we call the Bible, the Torah. Mm-hmm. Our organization, and I think you could say this of the Christian Vegetarian Association as well, our organization rests on a very solid theological foundation. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So that's really a major thing we have in our favor. No rabbi wants to debate us on these issues as to whether we should be eating meat or plants. The Torah, our sacred canon, is really on our side.
Wow.
Part of the way we did it, and this has really been wonderful for us, we have established a really strong partnership with the one Jewish organization out there that it would really behoove us to have a great relationship with. And that organization is called Hillel International. Hillel provides for Jewish life at more than 500 college campuses. So they have the key to college students. And just last summer, so it's a relatively young relationship, we formed a partnership with them to bring Ori Shavit to the United States. Now, Ori Shavit is one of the leaders of the vegan movement in Israel. And maybe at some point it would be great for this monthly video conference to have one of the leaders of the vegan movement of Israel, maybe even Ori herself. But the vegan movement in Israel has been burgeoning in the past 2 or 3 years. It's really incredible.
Yeah, we've heard.
And we have Ori Shavit coming to the United States in partnership with Hillel to speak to Jewish college students across the country. We had one tour in the fall, and in fact, Ori is coming back in 12 days. She gets here March 22nd, and we're going to be at about 15 colleges in the East and Midwest. And then in the fall, we hope to be on the West Coast. So we're reaching college students, which, as you know, and most of the people on this call probably recognize, that is the best demographic we could be reaching with the vegan message.
Yes, for sure. Is there any way that our listeners could find her itinerary?
Yes, if you just go to our website and you see the URL in the chat box, and by the way, either jewishveg.com or jewishveg.org, either one will work.
Okay.
It takes you to the same website. But if you just search, I see Jim Lando saying, we are going to be in Chicago, Jim, at Northwestern University of Chicago. And you can just go to our website, and if you do a search on Hillel, Hillel, or if you search on Ori Shavit, the name, a web page will come up with a map that shows all of the colleges.
Oh, that's great. And,
or you can certainly
how do you spell her name?
Great question. Shavit, Shavit is her last name, Shavit.
Okay.
And she's, you can also just go through the contact form on our website and ask us anything at all. And we promise we will get back to you within 24 hours, unless it's Shabbat. That might take 2 days.
That is giving us so much hope to hear that. And you're so right about reaching college students.
Yeah, it's not the only thing we do, but yeah, that's it's our favorite program. But we also speak at synagogues all over the country. I'm going to be speaking personally at a Moshe House in Washington, D.C. And a Moshe House is a place where not college students necessarily, but young adults in their 20s and 30s live together. So we're going to be having a vegan dinner and talking about the Jewish basis for veganism. So that's going to be in Bethesda, Maryland on the 17th. And I should add, since this is coming up just next week, we're going to be at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia with Dr. Michael Greger.
Oh, really?
Who has a great new book out, which I recommend to everybody.
Michael Greger's new book?
Yeah, How Not to Die. It's a great book.
Right. It's a great title. Yeah. Well, so on your website, jewishveg.org or com, you asked the question, did you know that the permission to eat meat is accompanied by a curse? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'm going to yeah, thank you, Judy. I'm going to call up a slide for everyone to see so they can see exactly what that is. Bear with me for a second. This will just take a second. This is great technology. All right, I'm going to have to go to the beginning here. Sorry about that. Okay, so there we go. What you may not realize about the Bible is that the permission to eat meat did not come until 9 chapters into Genesis. The original dietary instructions, in fact, it's part of the first conversation recorded in the Bible between God and human beings. God tells us, eat the plants and only the plants. That's Genesis 1, verse 29. So it's not until after the flood in Noah's Ark, that the permission to eat meat is first granted. And only then it's done very reluctantly by God and done in a real negative context. And part of that negative context is the curse that comes immediately before we're given permission to eat meat. And the curse, which you can see on your screen, is the animals will fear and dread you now.
Mm-hmm.
It says in Genesis, and earlier in Genesis, that the animals were created to be a help. Now they're going to fear and dread us. In fact, if you go into the wild, you will see that virtually every wild animal fears and dreads you. So
Right.
Whether you take this literally or not, we're still living with that curse many millennia later.
Yeah.
And then again, you see right after that, that's where the permission to eat meat is first granted. So our relationship with animals changes radically.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we can see that all around us when we're in the woods. And I noticed if I'm looking down in a creek, as soon as they see my shadow, they all disappear, the little fish and the frogs. And you wish, oh, I just want to be your friend.
Mm-hmm.
But so this is where it comes from. Amazing. So,
we should also mention later in that chapter, and actually I'm going to call it up again. I'm sorry,
okay.
it's a little unwieldy, but there's some spontaneity to our conversation, which is good.
Thanks to Lisa that we can do all this.
Yep.
Aww.
Okay, just lost it. Let's get that back up. Okay. Open presentation. Okay. I want to show you one more thing. This is in the same chapter of Genesis, chapter 9, where the permission to eat meat is first granted. It says in chapter 9 that the divine covenant is not just with people, it's with every living creature. And the amazing thing about this is that this is repeated 5 times in this chapter. You're only seeing it once. It's there 4 other times. What else in the Bible is repeated 5 times in a row? So God is making it very clear that animals are part of the divine covenant, that animals are object of God's concern. And this is just one of numerous indications in the Bible that we're not supposed to be killing animals for food or for any other reason.
So when you talk about that with Jewish people who've studied the Bible backwards and forwards, how do they respond if they want to disagree with you? What's their defense?
Yeah, the only defense they have, and it's not a very good one, but the only defense they have is that it is true that meat eating is permitted in the Bible and in Judaism. So they do have that. However, for instance, if you go to our website and you go to the homepage, you'll see a 2-minute excerpt of an interview with Rabbi David Rosen. Now, Rabbi David Rosen is not just any rabbi. He was the chief rabbi of Ireland, and he is currently, you could say, he is the rabbi who represents the Jewish people in meetings with other interfaith leaders, including the Pope. So he's a very important figure in Orthodox Judaism. You will hear him say in this 2-minute excerpt of an interview that no Jew should be eating meat because it violates a core moral precept of Judaism, which is called in Hebrew Tsar Ba'alei Chaim. Tsar Ba'alei Chaim means the prevention of suffering to animals. You are forbidden in Judaism to not only to cause an animal to suffer, you are required to relieve the animal's suffering if you have the opportunity to do so. This is in the Talmud, which is the vast compendium of Jewish law. So, of course, in Judaism, and I would hope in any religion, you cannot commit a sin to commit a good deed. So even if it's permitted to eat meat. You can't do it if you would have to commit a sin, or in Hebrew an avera, to do that. So what Rabbi Rosen is saying is that the treatment of animals in today's factory farming conditions is a desecration. That's the word he uses, not just a violation, a desecration of Tsar Ba'alei Chaim, the prevention of suffering to animals. And therefore, we all should be vegetarian or vegan. We should not be eating meat.
So this makes me think about the caparo. I don't know
Yeah.
how you say it.
You were very close.
Okay. That Karen Davis has been talking about and trying to convince that group of Jewish people to stop doing. Do they not listen to David Rosen?
I guess not. But what you should know, it's often called kaporos in Yiddish or kaparot in Hebrew. The thing about kaporos is that it is practiced only by a tiny, tiny fraction of Jews. Mm-hmm. Maybe, I know where I live in Pittsburgh, maybe half of 1% of the Jews here. Very tiny fraction. So even within Orthodoxy, it's only a small fraction of even Orthodox Jews. So unfortunately, it gets a lot more attention, so people think it's some normative Jewish practice, but it absolutely is not. Thankfully, only a very tiny minority of Jews practice it.
Could you explain to some of the listeners may not know what it is I was...
Oh, sure, yeah, I'm sure most don't. So, Kaporos is the practice that is performed between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in the fall, the Jewish high holy days, where these Jews who do this swing a live chicken over their heads, thinking that they can symbolically or spiritually transfer their sins to the chicken. The chicken is then slaughtered and supposedly given to a poor family, although we know that's often not the case. But even if that were the case, it's a horrendous thing. These are chickens from factory farms, like any other factory farm chicken, and they're transported to the Kaporo site without food, without water, in very tight cages, exposed to the elements, and then, as if that's not horrible enough, they're swung over a person's head who has no clue how to handle a chicken. So yeah, it is an awful thing, and Karen Davis is right. It should not be happening, and at Jewish Veg, we agree.
Okay, thanks. Well, Jeffrey, can you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey to veganism?
Yeah, and I think when you hear that, it'll make sense why I'm in this job. I actually was an omnivore, I'm almost ashamed to say, for about 40 years. And it was on Rosh Hashanah in 2007. You mentioned that date in my introduction, when I was in the Rosh Hashanah service in our synagogue with my wife. And Rosh Hashanah is thought to be the birthday for the world. So appropriately, in a lot of synagogues, they read the creation story from Genesis, because that's the birthday of the world, right? So when the Torah reader got to verse 29 of chapter 1, where it says, you will eat the plants, and I'm going to call that up too. Let's all take a look at what it says.
Okay.
This is part of the very first conversation between God and human beings. All right. Genesis 1:29. Behold, I have given you every herb yielding seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. Period. Nothing else. And what's even more amazing about this, if you're familiar at all with the creation story, you hear God saying, created, the oceans, and it was good. And on the third day, it was good. Not until we get these instructions to eat only plants does God say it was very good.
Mm.
So,
Wow.
no doubt this is what the ideal diet is in the Bible, and no rabbi and no clergy from Christianity could argue the point and would argue the point. It is the ideal diet in religious terms. So, at any rate, on that Rosh Hashanah, for some reason, we connected to the verse, and my wife and I looked at each other and said, it looks like we're supposed to be vegetarians. And we became vegetarians on the spot.
Wow.
So then
Wow.
I began looking into, well, if it says this in Genesis, what does the rest of the Bible say? And why are most Jews eating meat if this is what it says? Well, what I discovered, to my pleasant surprise, is this is actually a consistent theme throughout the Bible. I would say two things are a consistent theme. We're not supposed to be eating meat, and animals are supposed to be treated with exquisite sensitivity and compassion. So I started a blog called The Beet Eating Heeb to disseminate some of what I was learning, since people weren't hearing about it anywhere else, apparently. And then I became familiar with an organization called Jewish Vegetarians of North America. And make a long story short, became their executive director. We have since changed our name to Jewish Veg. And now we're disseminating this information, these values, from coast to coast.
Wow. What a story. So,
Yeah.
so you just went vegetarian on the spot.
Yeah, and then I
wife
do have to
agree?
give credit to Jonathan Safran Foer, because it was his book, Eating Animals, that led me to become vegan before I'd even finished the book.
Wow. So how long did it take for you to go vegan after that?
Yeah, it did take about 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it often does take a while.
Yeah,
because
but I
we
can
have-
tell you, if Jonathan Safran Foer had come out with that book 2 or 3 years earlier, it wouldn't have taken me 4 years.
Okay.
I was just like most people. I was so totally ignorant of how animals are treated.
Mhm.
I mean,
And dairy and eggs, yeah.
yeah, dairy, not only in the dairy and egg industry especially, but throughout animal agriculture.
Mhm. And what is the name of his book?
It's called Eating Animals. Yeah, it did. The book, it's actually Jonathan Safran Foer is a famous novelist. Some of his films, at least one, Everything is Illuminated, was made into a major motion picture. And he's only written one book of nonfiction, and that was Eating Animals.
Wow.
Yeah, so it really goes into a lot of detail about what really happens in animal agriculture.
Mhm. Well, that sounds like a good one. Very
Yeah, it
powerful.
really is, yeah.
Mhm.
You could probably still find it at your local Barnes & Noble if you ever set foot in a bookstore instead of going to Amazon.
Right, right. Okay, well, I had another question. I'm trying to, oh yes, I know what it was. We are becoming more and more aware in the movement that there's a lot of burnout going on because it's so difficult to face what happens to animals. And even though there's so much good news from your group and lots of other groups too, about more and more vegans and less animals being killed, at least in the U.S., we've been hearing about 500 million fewer animals have been killed in the U.S., but it's increasing in other countries. But nevertheless, there's a lot of good news out there, but there's also the suffering still going on. And so one of the reasons vegan spirituality has started, that Lisa started it, was to help give people a kind of a vegan or a spiritual path to take, or put their veganism together with their spiritual path, to give them some comfort, some way to cope with this burnout. So I just wondered what your thoughts were about that, and does it help you, your faith, to help you with any burnout that you experience?
Well, it definitely does. I really feel, and this isn't, I don't believe this is hubris at all on my part. I believe this with everything I know about religion and the Bible. In working for this organization, and I mentioned hard work is the first ingredient in the growth of the organization. What sustains me in large part is knowing that I'm really doing God's will. And however you think of God, there is no spiritual force in the universe that could possibly countenance what is happening right now in animal agriculture. So working hard, working long hours to combat that, I really feel I'm in line with a very strong spiritual force.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Mm.
I think that might help everybody that's listening and who will listen, because this will be recorded, right, Lisa? And
yes.
we share it with others. I think that's such an important message, that we're doing God's will, and that keeps us going in many ways and sustains us, I think. So I'm wondering if we could maybe open up for questions at this point.
Sure.
Is there anything else, Jeffrey, that you wanted to talk about before we do that?
No, just one thing I would say, if anybody would like to bring us to your church or synagogue, and we do speak at both in churches and at Christian colleges, please go to our website. You can go through the contact form, and we'd be happy to make that work.
Well, that's great. Wonderful to know.
Yeah, that's fabulous news, actually. So I will let you know there are a couple of questions that we got through the chat box that maybe we can start with those, and then what I'll do is I'll switch into a Q&A mode, and then people can ask their questions over the phone or via the computer. So just to start off with, there's a question about, so the advisors to Jewish Veg, are they vegan, or are they willing to help?
Oh, that's a good question.
Great question. Yeah. Our entire board of directors is vegan. Our entire staff is vegan. And of course, every recipe on our website is vegan. On our advisory council, most or all, I think they are all vegan, or maybe a couple are 99% of the way there. Mm-hmm. And the ones, couple of the ones I would really highlight, Alex Hershaft and Karen Ginsburg. To Alex especially, was just put on the Vegan Mount Rushmore by Veg News, if you saw that a couple of weeks ago. Was one of the foremost leaders of the vegan advocacy movement, and has been tremendously helpful to our organization. He was on the board of directors for a while. And then Karen Ginsburg, who wrote the book Animal Impact, and works, has been extremely helpful to us, advising us on how to grow the organization.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then another question, slightly different. This question is, if the Torah stipulates veganism, how do the non-vegan rabbis explain non-veganism?
Okay, I'm going to answer that in a couple of ways. First of all, I can tell you anecdotally, often when I'm speaking in a synagogue, for instance, on behalf of the organization, we were invited there by a member of the synagogue, not the rabbi. Mm-hmm. Quite often, when I make eye contact with a rabbi as I'm talking about the Torah basis for a plant-based diet, the rabbi looks uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Because they know what we're saying is exactly what is in the Torah. We're not making this stuff up. But the second point is, and I addressed this issue at the Animal Rights Conference 2 years ago in 2014 when it was in LA. I gave a whole talk about this, which I think you can find on the Jewish Veg YouTube site, which is, and this is true of all clergy, not just rabbis. Rabbis and clergy are people too. I know it sounds kind of funny to say, but because they're people too, they're susceptible to the same influences as we were before we became vegetarian or vegan, and the same influences that lead 95% of the American population to continue consuming meat and other animal products. So because they were raised in animal consuming families, because they're exposed to the $5 billion marketing machine of the meat movement in this country. For all these reasons, those are powerful forces that in some cases outweigh even the Torah.
Wow. That's really saying something, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think also that you mentioned that rabbis are people too. That's important. That I think really explains a lot of it, that maybe some education, which you guys are bringing to the Jewish community, might also help rabbis. And I think there are some Jewish vegan rabbis.
Oh, and there's no,
that are out
look
there.
at our rabbinic council, exactly right, Lisa. And also, if you go to our website, you can look at our rabbinic council, which is fairly impressive in and of itself. But we also have a veg rabbis list, which is by no means, it'll never be 100% complete, but there are a heck of a lot of rabbis listed on there, and you might even find one in your community. So I will say, as a demographic group, if you think of rabbis as a demographic group, a disproportionately high number of them are vegetarian or vegan for religious reasons. But they, of course, we know they all should be.
Yeah.
So there's another question we've got is that really asking about, there's a lot of pictures and information on the internet about a huge march that happened for animals in Israel. So can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, what's happening in Israel is really amazing. There's, I think the photograph the listener might be referring to, there is a huge annual parade in Israel. There's also large veg and vegan fest. So it's a very visible animal rights movement there. To give you just one example, and I could give you many, there's a reality television show there that is the most popular television show. It's called Big Brother, where a group of people are put together in an apartment and forced to live together on camera for like a month or two. And then people vote on who they like the best. The audience votes. So a couple years ago, there was a vegan on the show, a vegan activist, and she won she was the most popular Big Brother contestant and won the audience award. So this is the highest rated television program in Israel. That just gives you some sense of how visible the vegan movement is in Israel.
Yeah. A lot of people.
Very impressive.
Yeah. It's a small country. It's about the size of New Jersey, so ideas can travel fast. And this one has traveled fast.
Boy.
Wow. But thank you for answering those two questions that were in the chat box. And feel free, others, if you'd like to go ahead and ask questions or post them in the chat box. We'll continue to relay those. But if you'd like to ask the questions via your phone, I'm going to change into a Q&A mode, and then you'll also have the opportunity to unmute yourself. So hold on one moment. There'll be a little announcement there.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Great. So as she said, you can press *6 if you're on your phone to unmute yourself, and then you'll be able to speak directly with Jeffrey. And if you are on the computer, there's a little icon next to your name, and it's a microphone. I think you can click on that, and that will unmute you and give you the opportunity to speak from your computer. So feel free to do so, and then you can ask your questions directly. And if that doesn't work for you, oh, yes, great. Hi, what's your name?
Leighton Wassam in Springfield, Illinois.
Hi, Leighton.
Thank you, Leighton.
Jeffrey, historically, up until the Second Temple was destroyed, when an animal was sacrificed, it was the priest that would do the honors of killing the animal and then eating some of it. My question is, to what extent did the Jewish people eat animal? Was it only when they took it and had that may have only been once a year?
Thank you, Lay. That's not actually the sacrifice question always comes up. It's usually not framed that way. So thanks, Leighton, because that's part of how I answer. I'm going to call up the slide again because I got one on that tip.
Okay.
This is something most people don't know, which is, it says we lost. You know what? I'm just going to tell you what it says. It's in Leviticus. It says in Leviticus that you cannot kill an animal outside the temple sacrifice. In fact, it says it is akin to murder. It's in Leviticus, I believe, 17. So don't quote me on the chapter, but it is in Leviticus. So the only time meat was being consumed was in conjunction with the temple sacrifice, not as part of regular dietary pattern. If I had a choice between what we have today or going back to the temple period, I would choose a temple period 10 times out of 10.
Wow,
Thank you.
I did not know that. Yeah.
Great.
May I make
Thank
a comment
you. Sure.
May I make a comment for anyone to evaluate it? You were mentioning about burnout, and I recently re-saw the movie on Gandhi, and I think that Martin Luther King Jr. Used the same tactics, and that is for us to peacefully demonstrate, to increase the awareness of the public of what we believe. That's it.
Yeah,
and I think
beautiful.
I think it might even be a way of channeling our efforts and our concentration, and it might reduce burnout.
Mm-hmm.
I can't watch the video. What is it? The Earthlings, the DVD, The Earthlings.
Yeah.
I had that. I don't know how long before I got the courage to watch it, and I threw it, but I've never watched it again.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult one
to
watch.
Disturbing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Liam, for sharing with us.
Yeah.
And we have a few other questions. I'm going to invite, again, if you'd like to join us on the phone, that's fine. But a couple of questions I'm just going to read from the chat box because there's a lot of percolating conversation going on here. So Jeffrey, do you address, since veganism is not a diet per se, but a lifestyle, do you address the use of animals for clothing, for entertainment, or do you focus on food?
We focus, I completely agree with the premise of the question. Of course, that's true. We do focus mainly on food because that's where most of the animals are, and that's the biggest problem. But no, certainly I don't wear leather, wool, and I believe it applies to clothing, vivisection, and all exploitation of animals.
Okay. So your approach with your organization is a strategic one.
Well, yeah, we certainly want to put our resources where we can make the most gain for animals and for Jewish values, and that's really in the area of food. That's where most people interact with animals every day, when they eat something or get something to drink.
But it's
now another question.
I was just going to say, not exploiting them in any way is consistent with the Torah, right?
No, I would go, it's not a matter of not exploiting them, it's going beyond that. You know, there's a tremendous story in the Torah, in the Bible, about what to do if you see your enemy's donkey struggling under his load. Now, this is your enemy's donkey coming down the path. You are supposed to put your personal bad feelings for your enemy aside and help the donkey. That's how strong this message is in the Bible. It trumps how you feel about the person.
Wow.
Profound.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Now, here's another question that we have, which is, where do the rules of kashrut come into play? For example, the split hoof or only fish, not crustaceans.
Yeah, I think if I understood the question right, because I did see it in the chat, it's saying, well, how can eating meat be a sin if there are all these laws of kashrut? It's very easy to explain. For one thing, all of the laws of kashrut apply to animal products. There are no limitations virtually on eating vegetables, fruit, beans, spices, nuts, lentils. It's only when it comes to animal products are there any restrictions at all. So what does that tell you? Right off the bat, there's some moral problem with consuming animal products. Number two, as we saw in Genesis 9, where the permission to eat meat was granted, this was a very reluctant permission. In fact, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, who was the founder of modern Orthodoxy, he was an American rabbi in the 20th century, revered by Orthodox Jews still today. He said it was absolutely the most reluctant permission granted to human beings in the Bible. So what the laws of kashrut or the kosher laws are, it's a way of God saying, look, I don't want you to be consuming meat, but if you're going to do it, I'm going to make it difficult for you by imposing all these rules. So that's, when I say that eating meat is a sin, it doesn't contradict the laws of kashrut.
Okay.
You can hold both those thoughts in your head at the same time.
Great.
I have a question.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Oh, there's a question, yes?
Okay.
Please tell us
Yeah,
your
first of
name.
all, yep. Okay. Yeah, this is Richard Schwartz. I'm President Emeritus of Jewish Faith.
Hi, Richard.
And first,
Hi, Richard.
hi, how are you doing?
Great.
And first, I want to super commend Jeffrey for the fabulous job you're doing tonight and for all these years and all the progress you've been talking about. So one of the questions I have is, as you know, we are now in the middle of a tremendous heat wave. Temperature records are being broken every day. 2015 was the warmest year. The climate experts are telling us that climate change could be a great threat to humanity. And as you know, animal-based diets are a major contributor to that. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the urgency of a shift to vegan diets in terms of responding to this existential threat to the entire world, that of climate change.
Yeah, from a Jewish perspective, thank you, Richard. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple months at our board meeting. Yeah, just a couple of things, because this is something we also do talk about as an organization. There's a concept in Judaism called Bal Tashit, which is simply thou shalt not waste. And you are prohibited in Judaism to waste natural resources. So we know how tremendously wasteful animal agriculture is. It uses many times more land, several times more water, and is a source of major environmental degradation and climate change to boot. So I won't say the Bible talks a ton about environmentalism, but it is definitely there. And in fact, there's it's called it's in the Mishnah. It's a more hard part of the official Jewish commentary, that says, quotes God as saying, "I have created this beautiful world. There is no one after you to fix it if you mess it up." I'm paraphrasing. So there's within the Jewish canon, there are some beautiful messages about the environment that, of course, relate to animal agriculture, which we all know is or should know that it's the number one source of environmental degradation.
Right. Oh.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. And there's another question here that we have. Besides the Genesis 1:29 and chapter 9, are there any other Jewish principles at play to recommend veganism?
Okay, I'm going to try to get the slides up again because there's there's two quick things I'd like to touch on in answer to that question. Okay. The first is this, and I always say, if I can only get one message across, it is this. The concept of dominion in the Bible found in Genesis 1:26 is the most misunderstood, misinterpreted, abused word in the entire Bible, Jewish or Christian. Because people think the word dominion gave us license to do whatever the heck we want to animals. Absolutely not true. You see where it comes from here in Genesis 1:26? I'll just say two things about that. It's part of the same sentence where God says, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." So we're supposed to exercise dominion as God exercises dominion over human beings. And that is with compassion and mercy. Those are the primary attributes of God according to Jewish understanding. So we're not supposed to be exercising dominion like a harsh, violent ruler. But even if that weren't the case, it's part of the exact same conversation as Genesis 1:29. It's literally part of the same conversation where we're told to eat the plants, only the plants. Right. So it's very clear that dominion did not give us the right to kill animals for food. The other thing I want to show you real quick, if I can explain this, I really encourage people to open up their Bibles and read the story in Numbers 11. It is the most dramatic story in the Bible that is never in the movies and that people never talk about, and Sunday school teachers don't teach it. In Numbers 11, the Israelites are in the desert. They're subsisting on manna, which is certainly a plant food. A group of the Israelites begin demanding meat, and God kills them in a plague and buries them in the graves of gluttony. And there's a reason clergy members, priests, ministers, rabbis, and Sunday school teachers do not like to talk about Numbers 11. It makes them very uncomfortable, as well it should, because it really shows how strongly God feels we should not be killing animals for food.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's powerful, all right.
Yeah. Now, Jeffrey, we have another question here, which is a questioning, asking if your friend, the rabbi, the one you mentioned from Ireland, does he have any insight into the Pope's personal views about veganism? This Pope is one who seems to be very supportive of the environment and is calling for compassionate treatment of and reverence for all creatures. So just wondering if there's any information about that.
It's something I can't claim to be a total expert on the papacy, but I actually, my previous position at the Jewish Federation, I was heavily involved in Jewish Catholic relations, and I even had a chance to be part of a papal audience at the Vatican when Pope Benedict was there, before the current Pope. I will say this. If you read the Pope's encyclical, which is the most authoritative document a Pope can put out, if you read that encyclical, which came out about a year ago, the Pope said the most beautiful things about animals. It was really amazing. Of course, he should. He's Pope Francis. He took his name from the patron saint of animals. However, what's interesting about the encyclical, and you can read it online, it's even, I believe, might even be in bookstores. I encourage people to read it. What you will see is, although he says the way we are treating animals is a sin, and if it's not a sin, then what the heck is? This is what he says. But he never specifically, oh, did we lose Judy?
Yeah.
She may still be with us. We just,
okay.
You can press the webcam again. We can hear you. If you want to join us with your image, you can press the webcam button. But anyway,
right.
go.
Just to finish that thought, the interesting thing about the encyclical, and it's kind of sad actually, the Pope stopped just short of ever talking about animal agriculture, meat, or food. And it's quite conspicuous if you read it. He went right up to the line and turned back. And the reason I think he did that, I don't really know about his personal dietary practices, but I don't think he's even vegetarian. But the reality is, as even the Pope, as you would think he's the most powerful religious figure, even the Pope is under constraints. There are constraints on his power. And there are many farmers, ranchers, and not to mention meat eaters in the Catholic Church, and he does not want to alienate them. And that is my educational guess, my educated guess as to why he said everything but stop eating meat and go vegan.
Wow. Well, thank you. You certainly had more insight on this than we realized. That's an interesting history that you have. Wondering if you, in your organization, do you encourage activism or mainly veganism? I mean, do you encourage activism along with that?
Yeah, we, and this is something we're continuing to work on. Now, activism is a big word, so that might mean different things to different people. But we do have a what you can do section of our website, which we're continuously augmenting. But for instance, this Sunday, a week from Sunday in Washington, D.C., is going to be the APAC conference. It is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It is the biggest gathering of Jews of the year anywhere. It's not exactly a Jewish conference per se, but if there's going to be 15,000 people there, there'll be 10,000 Jews at least. We are going to be leafleting outside the conference.
Wow.
The first Sunday of the conference, people are showing up, so we'll be outside the convention center. If you're in Washington, please feel free to join us. We could use all the people we can handing out brochures. So yeah, we definitely do, and we're also forming chapters around the country because we really are trying. We're not just an organization; we're trying to create a movement. So yes, we are all about activism, and that is core to the way we do business.
Is your brochure on your website?
I'm sorry, what's yeah, if you go to the shop page, you can access it. It's on the slideshow on our homepage. If you go to our online store, you can order brochures there. Or if you are have some financial constraints, just go through the contact form on our website and we'll send you the brochures. And so people know what the brochures do. We have something, and I should have mentioned this, our Veg Pledge program. where we're actually helping people make the transition to plant-based diets. So those brochures steer people to the pledge form, which is online, and encourage people to sign up so they can start making the transition themselves.
Oh, that's great. Wonderful.
Wow, that is excellent. So that's certainly a form of activism right there.
Yes, it sure is. Well, you know, Lisa, it's a little after 8. I know we still have some questions coming in. But I know you have another engagement. Do you want to take another question, or should we?
Sure. What we'll do, why don't we take, we'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll do we have actually a closing reading that Jeffrey's going to do, so we'll do that. So we'll just take a couple more minutes to answer these questions. We want to be able to acknowledge everyone for participating with us this evening, and thank you so much to everybody. So just a couple more minutes. We've got, we have some people on the chat box are saying they're very happy and proud to be a member of Jewish Veg, and to commend you, Jeffrey, for your leadership. That's wonderful. Everyone's just singing your praises, which we are too. We're so excited to have you as our guest. And it looks like there was a comment also about the book Dominion, written by Matthew Scully, and looked at animal rights while leaning on Christian canon. Then it says, this person is asking about, there isn't, or that person hasn't seen any literature that draws on the Jewish tradition. Can you recommend any books that might be good resources for Jewish vegans or people interested in the topic? And that was by Deanna Prime.
Yeah, thank you. Deanna's a friend of mine here in Pittsburgh. The Richard Schwartz, who was just on the call, actually wrote the most authoritative book on the subject. I believe it's in its 3rd or 4th edition. It's called Judaism and Vegetarianism. And if you go again to our online bookstore or jewishveg.org/shop, there's different ways to get to it. There's a bookstore online where you can order books directly from our site, and we'll send it to you. So there's that book. There's another author, Roberta Kalachowski. Some of her books are on there. These are very authoritative books about the Jewish basis for vegetarianism or veganism. And Dominion by Matthew Scully is a really great book. I've read it myself, and I would recommend it.
Right.
So thank you. I think that's it for our questions. As I mentioned, there's a great dialogue going on in the chat box for people. And then we'll ask Jeffrey to do our closing reading for the evening. And I want to also thank everyone for participating in this call on behalf of In Defense of Animals. And we have these gatherings every month. And our next guest is going to be a gentleman who he's working on something called the Compassion Project. He's a film producer. So we hope that you can join us for that in the next month. And it's always the 2nd Thursday of the month when we gather together. And that's just to give you a heads up. And for anyone who's in the Florida area, we have a vegan spirituality retreat that's going on this Sunday, the 13th of March, that is in Tallahassee area of Florida. So if you know anyone there, Victoria Moran, who wrote The Good Karma Diet and Main Street Vegan, she's going to be the speaker, and we'll have an opportunity for folks to connect with each other, to do some yoga, some meditation, to walk in nature, and to do a ceremony that is about having honor and compassion for animals around the world. So we hope that some of you can join us. If you know anyone in Florida, please pass it on. I'll put in the chat box the website, but it's www.idausa.org/retreats, and that'll take you to the page with more info. So again, thanks to everyone, to Judy, our co-host, and also to Jeffrey. We're super grateful to have you as our guest this evening.
Yes, we sure are, Jeffrey. Thank you.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you. Okay,
So do you
so are
want?
we ready for the closing prayer?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Yes, we
so
are.
it's not a reading per se, but this is a very special prayer that actually comes directly from the book of Numbers. It's thousands of years old, and it's the priestly blessing. And I feel privileged to make this blessing because I'm a Cohan, and in the Jewish tradition, the Kohanim were the priestly caste, and it was the Kohanim who gave the priestly blessing to everybody else. So as I recite this short prayer, this ancient prayer, I want you to think that the you in the prayer is not only you personally out there in cyberspace, but also the billions of animals that are out there suffering. And consider this prayer in that context. So with that introduction, here we go. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and protect you. Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'hunecha. May God deal kindly and graciously with you. Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bestow divine prayer upon you and grant you peace. And with that, I will say shalom.
Oh.
Thank you so much. That was
Shalom,
beautiful.
and thank you. That was such a wonderful ending for this great gathering of minds and hearts. And it's a special delight. I'll share that my grandfather was a rabbi, and so it's really nice to connect with you and the Jewish community on our vegan spirituality gathering this evening. So many prayers and blessings to everyone in doing this great work in the world and spreading the message of compassion for all living beings. So thanks to everyone. Have a wonderful evening. If you'd like to unmute yourself and just have a group goodbye, you can do that and just say shalom.
We'd love to do that.
Oh.
Your line is now unmuted.
Okay.
Shalom, and thank you for making this possible.
Oh, thank you. Shalom. Good night, everyone. Shalom.
Shalom.
Have a wonderful
Thank
Okay,
you.
good night, Lila Tov.
Good night. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.